Hi everyone, it's Kimber, the study abroad specialist, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the difference between study abroad and study away and how to decide which one is best for you. So before we dive into today's topic, I just want to let you know about a freebie download that I have for you. If you check into the description box, you will see a link to my starter planning worksheet for study abroad. So with this starter worksheet, this comes from my Learn How to Study Abroad in 30 Days series. If you have not had a chance to watch that series, I will link that in a card as well, and also in the description box. But with this planning worksheet, it takes about 10 minutes, and it's really useful for you to just begin to think about what you want to do for study abroad. So particularly for students who you have just gotten onto YouTube and you found this video, thank you so much for being here. And you're like, I don't even know what I want to do with study abroad. I just know that it sounds pretty cool. This is going to be a great useful worksheet for you. And like I said, it takes about 10-15 minutes to just go through and fill out just to get those ideas flowing. So definitely check that out, and you can download it for absolutely free. So to dive into the topic of today, we're talking about study abroad and study away. So with this topic, it always makes me a little bit, I don't want to say anxious, but it's just because of the fact that particularly here in the US, this gets interchanged so much, and they're actually not the same thing. And I think that it's really confusing for students. Like, so much is for study abroad, which is the exact reason why I built my company, because I know that when I was first getting started with study abroad, a lot of the stuff was confusing, and this was before social media and everything, where people were just talking nonsense. So and I don't mean to say that disparagingly, I'm just saying that it's really kind of crazy the way that things get intermingled in terms of terminology, and it's like, that does not mean what you think it means. So what I always like to say, and I've said this before in different videos, is that all study abroad programs are study away programs, because by definition, study abroad means that you are going abroad, you are traveling away. However, all study away programs are not abroad. And we will dive deeper into that in a second. But I want to be very clear about that, because again, a lot of times when you're on websites, it could even be your current school's, college, or university's website, and they may have study abroad and study away, and they may be using it interchangeably, and they're not always interchangeably. You really have to read into the text of it. And even for a lot of colleges and universities that I've seen, they're talking about study abroad as if it is the same as study away, and it is not. So that is why it drives me insane, and I just want to add more clarity around it. So as we were just discussing with study abroad specifically, and if you look at the very first video of my Learn How to Study Abroad in 30 Days series, we talk more about this. But study abroad specifically is the act of studying in a different country other than your birth and other than where you live. So again, it doesn't have to be super fancy. It could even be, for example, I know a lot of students that I work with, they live here in the US and they study abroad in Canada. While it may not seem that it is overseas, because it's technically not, we're right next door, it's still in a different country, so that counts. Same thing if you're going to be here in the US, you're studying in Mexico. Same thing if you are living in the UK and you're going across to Italy. That does not matter, but it means actively going to a different country. That is what study abroad means by definition, if you are logically thinking about it. Now, it's study away is interesting because it has a very strong dichotomy. So study away can mean study abroad, but it does not always mean study abroad. So with study away, you will find that this particular term became very popular within the, I would say, like the 2010s. So within the past 15 years or so, they use it a lot in a lot of Australian-based universities and colleges, and I'm sure that that's where American schools picked it up from, because they're always picking up stuff from other people. But now a lot of US-based and some Canadian-based schools at the university level, and some other levels as well, are starting to use this terminology for study away. What study away essentially means at the baseline is that you are studying at a different institution. But what that looks like for a lot of students here in the US is that study away is primarily meaning that your school has partnered with other schools that are also within the country, and you can go somewhere else. So I know, for example, take the University of Georgia, go Dogs. They have a great study away program, but what they do is they partner with other institutions, let's say in Texas or in Oregon or in Washington State, other places around the country. And it is a unique situation because based on where we live here in the US, we have 50 states, which are all very different and operate differently. And so you can feel like you're going to a different country in a way. But part of the reason why they're doing study away is because they want to be able to expose students to different cultures, different places, and also to they get a chance to work on their academics while they're there as well. So I think that is brilliant. I think that's great. It's very similar in Australia as well, because Australia is also a huge country, not as big as the US, but in that way of you maybe going from one part of Australia all the way to the other side. And so that is considered study away because you are away. And even though you're within your same country of birth or where you normally operate, you're still experiencing something entirely different. So I love that idea. And I think that it does have value. I would have loved to experience something like that, even though I sort of did my own study away a lots of different times, but it wasn't called that back when I was in college and even in high school. But I love the sort of structured idea of a study away program of students who maybe they're not even going to get a chance to study abroad, but they want to just do something that is different. And for most students, they don't get to do where they're enrolled in one college, one place, and they get to go to another college even for like a month or something like that to experience that. So I love that for them. However, there are some study away programs that only have that component, and then there are some that are fully encompassed of both study abroad and study away. So with the study away programs that have study abroad, that means that they also offer something where you're not just going to get a chance to, let's say if you're here, let's just keep using the US. If you're here in the US, let's go back to UGA, you're in UGA and you are going to Oregon to study away. That's different. They also may have study away components where you can go to London, you can go to France, you can go to Germany. So I always like to make that distinction that, again, all study abroad programs are by definition study away, but all study away programs are not study abroad programs. The next point on this is that I wanted to just make it clear that study away is definitely much more niche. So essentially study away would be considered domestic exchange programs. And in an upcoming video, I'm going to be talking more about exchange students because I know that this is something that a lot of people also have questions about when they're first getting started with their study abroad research, but we will talk about that in a forthcoming video. But for the study away programs, these are going to be much more niche. So as I said, during my research and just talking to different people, I have found that in particular, Australia, the US, and some parts of Canada are really big on the idea of study away, but they definitely are much more niche. And there are reasons for that. The first one is that for a lot of people, particularly for organizations that are focused on study abroad, let's say like an American Institute for Foreign Study, even though they have some components of this that they are starting to develop, study abroad is something that is very well defined in people's minds. And so sort of changing the terminology to mean something else can get very confusing. Whereas with individual institutions, you're able to do that because it's whatever is based on what your institution plans to do. But you have to keep in mind that not every university, not every college offers something like this, just in the same that not every college, every university around the world offers study abroad, but that when you see study away, a lot of times when people are Googling that or looking on YouTube, that they may be a bit confused, like study away, study abroad. That's exactly why we are here at this video, right? To kind of understand the difference, but just keeping in mind that it is much more niche. It's also going to be much more defined by your school and what's going to matter. So for example, for schools that do have study away programs, they often have certain parameters. So you have to have a certain GPA in order to go do that. You have to have gone through different screening requirements of making sure that obviously they don't want people who are going to be causing trouble or who had too much trouble on their own home campus to go to another campus for a little while as well. They want to have a good representation of their school at a different place. So there's all these different requirements that you may have. Whereas if you were applying to an external study abroad program to go somewhere for a semester, you may not have those different requirements. So I always just like to tell students that your school may not offer that. You may have to, if you're interested in study away, that you may just have to do study abroad instead, because it is still more niche and it's not as popular as you would think in terms of it hasn't quite hit the broad mass lexicon. Again, if you start Googling, you will see that it is sort of relegated to a lot of different schools throughout the US and other countries, but that it's used interchangeably. And then when you start reading in the information that they provide, you're like, this is actually study abroad. This isn't study away. So I always like to just make it as clear as possible that it's more niche. And so you may not have an opportunity to find what you're looking for, and you may just want to stick with doing study abroad instead. So to answer the question of how you should decide which one is going to be best for you, I always like to boil it down to a couple of things. So, and you will know this if you've been on this channel for any time. The first thing I like to talk about is what are your goals, because that pretty much determines everything that you do. It determines everything you do in life. So what are going to be your actual goals for wanting to either study abroad or study away? For some students, they prefer study away because it's going to be a little bit easier. They still get a chance to do some travel and to meet different types of people, but maybe they're not interested in spending however long in a different country. That's not interesting to them. On the reverse side, there's a lot of students that are like, look, I'm just ready for something new, even if it's just for 5 months. I'm ready to try something new, maybe learn a new language, maybe experience a new culture that is completely different from my own. And so you definitely have to decide what is going to work best for you in terms of your goals. I would also say in terms of your schedule, keeping in mind that since a lot of study away programs are run by schools and institutions, that they tend to follow along with whatever the school's calendar is. Whereas with a lot of study abroad programs, you have more options because, again, you could do an independent program where they run completely off season to what a normal institution would do. So you have to think about it in terms of that as well. What's going to work best for your schedule? Last but not least, your finances. As we touched on a little bit earlier, for most study away programs, those are going to be faculty led. And so it means that it is tied directly to your current institution. And that is great for students who want to just be able to directly apply any financial aid or scholarships or anything like that to the program. They don't have to think about it. Whereas, of course, if you are doing an independent program or any type of program that is not related to your school, it could be more expensive. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it does mean that you're going to have to do a lot more of the legwork yourself. You may or may not get scholarships. You may have to find your own visa. And a lot of these things would already be taken care of. If you are doing a study away, you don't necessarily need a visa for that. But even if you are doing study abroad through your own school, as we talked about, that your school is going to handle a lot of that heavy lifting that you're going to need. So I would say that it comes down to those three things: your goals, your schedule, and your finances, of figuring out which one is going to work best. But I always like to have students think of those three things in tandem, because they often do work together and play off each other. So you have to have everything rightly aligned, which never happens completely, but you want to have everything similarly aligned so that it's going to work best for you. And so I hope this video was helpful for you. I want to know in the comments, had you heard of study away before? I know that it is something that comes up a lot when you are on Google or on YouTube, but had you heard of it before finding this video? If you had not, what do you think of it now? Are you think that you will consider study abroad or study away if your school has it? I want to know where you're going and what your plans are. Again, in the comment section, that's where we start generating more information for other students to be able to use and to find out as well. That's what we are here for. So definitely do that when you get a chance underneath the video. Also, as well, don't forget to download your freebie. So you have the free planning starter worksheet for study abroad, which can be done in about 10 minutes. You also have access to my Finding Your Perfect Study Abroad program e-guide, which is going to be very helpful for you. You can learn more about faculty-led programs, as we talked about in this video, as well as the 2 other common types of study abroad programs. If you are new to the channel, I release videos every single Friday and sometimes on Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. So definitely please subscribe and also share this video with someone else in your network who's interested in study abroad. I look forward to seeing you in the next video very soon.